Great. Well, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Randy Villegas. I am a professor, a school board member, and your candidate for California 22 to flip this seat away from Republican David Valadao. And so, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Bakersfield in a working class family. I'm the son of immigrants from Mexico, my dad from Michoacan, and my mom from Guerrero. And I grew up working in a very working class family. I grew up working at the swap meet every weekend, getting up at 6 a.m. on Sunday to go help my family make ends meet, and later grew up working at my family's auto repair shop, which today I'm an owner of. Ultimately, I was the first in my family to go to college and university at Bakersfield College and CSU Bakersfield. And by the grace of God, I got a full ride scholarship to get my PhD at UC Santa Cruz. But I knew my heart was always back here in the Central Valley. And so for the last 6 years, I've been a professor of political science at College of the Sequoias in Hanford and Tulare mainly. And then I'm also a school board trustee for the Visalia Unified School District for the last 5 years, where I have fought to increase teachers' wages by over 10%, but not just our teachers, all of our classified employees, like our school bus drivers, our custodians, our nutrition workers, who are often the first faces that students see every single day. And I'm running for Congress because I love the Central Valley. The people who live here, we feed, and fuel the world. Our oil and gas workers keep the lights on. Our farm workers put food on everybody's table. And yet, despite that, our Central Valley families are struggling. And the same programs that I grew up on, like Medicaid, SNAP, and WIC, are all being gutted by this administration. And I was taught at a very young age, by my mom, a dicho, a saying of wisdom in Spanish. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres, which translated to English means tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And I think the same thing can be said about politics. Tell me who you're taking money from and I'll tell you who you're actually working for. That is why I am proud to be the only candidate in this race that is not taking a dime of corporate PAC money. I've never touched a corporate PAC check and I never will because I want to make sure that we're accountable to our communities and not to special interests. And this is a fight not just to take back the House and flip the seat, but it's also a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. My Democratic opponent in this race, Jasmine Baines, has taken about the same corporate PAC money that Valadao has. There's a list of 53 corporate PACs that both of my opponents have taken money from, including corporations like Amazon, Walmart, DaVita, United Health, a health insurance company that was using AI algorithms to deny more people's claims so that they could profit while our families suffer. Nobody should be profiting from your suffering. Nobody should be profiting from your pain. That is why I am a proud supporter of universal health care and Medicare for all. We need to ensure that we are fighting for patients and not for profits when it comes to this system. And so I'm honored again to have the support of so many folks across this district. I'm endorsed by all four chairs of our local Democratic Central Committees, have widespread support among city council members, school board members, and hospital board members across the district. And again, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. I'm proud to also have the endorsements of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Bold PAC, including Congresswoman Linda Sanchez, Congressman Rob Menendez, and was also recently endorsed by the Congressional Progressive Caucus, including Congresswoman Maxwell Frost and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, and somebody who I've long admired in this fight for justice in our country, economic justice, social justice, and civil rights. Honored to also share that Senator Bernie Sanders has endorsed our campaign. And so I'm proud to be supported by people, most of all, our teachers, our farm workers, our oil and gas workers, folks who make the Central Valley run and who really make their entire world run. And so I'm honored to be in this fight and would welcome and would love to earn the endorsements of the San Joaquin Valley Democrats Club. We know that it takes everybody in this fight, right? It doesn't just take a village, it takes a valley. So happy to answer any questions you might all have, and thank you all so much for the amazing work that you do.
Thank you. All right, so it sounds like we're open to questions. Rico, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay, Randy, from there?
Yeah, I can hear you, Rico.
Okay, good. So everybody at the club knows, when I started this year for this election cycle, my big issue is with PG&E and our electric prices. That's mainly a state issue, Governor CPUC. But over the past 12 months, it's actually been clear that electricity prices have been going up increasingly throughout the entire country, with AI data centers requiring a lot more demand and supply-demand prices. But have you looked into any ideas to try and solve this from a federal level?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I will also bring up back to our other point around corporate PAC money. both of my opponents in this race, Democratic and Republican alike, have received thousands of dollars from both PG&E and SoCal Edison. And so it's no wonder that they're quiet when PG&E wants to jack up rates for consumers so they can have more record-breaking profits for shareholders. It's ridiculous. And at the same time, we are paying for their poor planning and their lack of investment when it comes to fire safety. And to your point, especially with the increase of AI technology, we are actually seeing corporations like BlackRock, Vanguard buying up local utility companies for these data processing centers that are not only going to jack up our rates even higher, but are also going to lead to a scarcer resource, which we already know that we need here in the Central Valley, which is water, right? Not just water for agriculture, but many communities here in the Central Valley that still don't have access to safe, affordable drinking water and clean drinking water coming out of their faucets, right? And so I would personally propose, in the same way that we've seen some action at the state level, I think we need to get corporations out of politics, both when it comes to money and finance. But there are steps we can take to say that we should ban, Vanguard, BlackRock, private corporations from buying up these utility companies and also forming up and breaking these monopolies. In the same way that we've got to apply that logic to our housing market, right? We used to talk about the Central Valley as one of the only places where you could afford to buy a home in California and still live a good quality of life. And that is getting further and further away because you have Wall Street and BlackRock buying up entire neighborhoods, trying to force us all to become renters. And so one policy that I want to put forward when we get to Congress is to ban corporations from owning single family homes because corporations should not be able to buy those homes. Our young people, our working families should be able to buy those homes.
James, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
You might be muted, James. Oh,
No, he wrote
got
in
it.
the chat.
Got it. Absolutely. So, in terms of folks that I would like to meet first in DC, ultimately it would be bringing folks from the Central Valley to DC to tell their stories themselves. I think that's really important to make sure that we're able to share those stories. And yes, I'm there to advocate on behalf of people, but I think it's very powerful when we bring our own farm workers or teachers or young people who are on the front lines of these issues to directly tell their stories. In terms of people in DC that I'd like to meet, I would like to meet other members of the Progressive Caucus. I'm a really big fan of folks like Congressman Greg Casar, Congresswoman Summer Lee, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, who have been at the forefront of so many of these issues, both domestically and globally. So in terms of, what caucuses I would join, certainly the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Beyond that, I also want to form, if there's not already a caucus formed, for deported veterans. It is an issue that is quite near and dear to my own heart, and I've done advocacy for and organizing around for the last few years. And it is something that I think absolutely needs to be brought up, and we need to bring our patriots back home. In terms of my dream committee assignments, obviously being in the Central Valley, being able to advocate for agriculture and being on that committee, but also personally coming from a background in education as a professor and a school board trustee, also, really be open to serving on education and labor. I think there's so much that we can put forward, whether it is universal, TK across the country or looking at universal childcare. And these are not pipe dreams, right? New Mexico has passed universal childcare in their state, and while at the same time being able to increase wages for those workers. So it's not a question of whether we have the money, it's whether we have the political will and courage to do so. In terms of where I stand on universal single-payer healthcare, I'm absolutely in support of universal healthcare. I would be committed to sponsoring Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Jayapal's Medicare for all in the House. So absolutely.
So real quick, just to read the questions in case all of you can't read it from there. Who would you like to meet first in DC? What would be your dream committee assignment? What caucuses would you join? And then he also asked, where do you stand on universal single-payer healthcare? Will you sign a no fossil fuel pledge? And we do not endorse people that take law enforcement money. Do you take law enforcement money?
Got it. I have not taken law enforcement nor fossil fuel money. I do not plan to either. I'm committed to making sure that we are the campaign that is actually fighting for working class people, not corporate PACs, not special interests. With that, I will also say that I am not accepting any money from APAC. Again, I think our tax dollars should be used to fund our education system, our healthcare system here in the United States, not bombing innocent children across the world. I was proud to be one of the early local elected officials to sign on to a ceasefire letter, sadly, when that was considered controversial at the time. But we have to have consistency in foreign policy. We cannot turn a blind eye to genocide, whether that is what is going on in Palestine, whether that is what is going on in Congo. And we actually need to fight for consistent foreign policy when it comes to the United States. And that is what I will continue to fight for in Congress.
Go ahead, Lynn.
I signed up to work as a volunteer for you. I think at either an indivisible meeting or some other place. Do I need to sign up again? Are you calling people back who've signed up with you to work as volunteers?
Yes,
I'm not in your district. I'm up here in Clovis and Fresno area in CD20, which I don't think there's even a candidate running as a Democrat.
Gotcha. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to drop a link, a hyperlink in the chat here, because I'm not sure if these links went through, for you to sign up and volunteer. We're actually going to be able to start collecting signatures to get on the ballot in just a couple days on the 19th. So absolutely appreciate your support. And you won't even have to come all the way down to Bakersfield now that Prop 50 is passed. Parts of West Fresno County are now part of the district, and so we're able to collect signatures across, the 4 counties to get on the ballot. And so we absolutely need all support and all hands on deck. For any of you who want to volunteer, you can head to randy.vote/volunteer. Additionally, if you want to make a contribution, you can head over to randy.vote/donate. I'm proud to be the top fundraising Democrat in this race, despite the fact that we're not taking any corporate PAC money whatsoever. At this point, we have managed to raise more than the previous challenger at this point in time in these quarters. Again, without taking a single cent of corporate PACs. And so with an average contribution of just around $50, that shows that people are fired up and energized to take back this seat and to do it in a way that stays true to our communities and our values.
Thank you.
So James also asked, missing murdered Indigenous women and girls, what would you do to make that a more known issue?
Definitely. I think we need to make sure that we are passing laws. Well, first, we need to bring more awareness to this issue because I don't think enough folks realize the staggering amount of statistics when it comes to Indigenous women and especially women who are prone to violence, from these communities, and the fact that they often don't get as much coverage whenever folks go missing or abused. I think there needs to be strong oversight, both not just within reservations, but beyond, to make sure that we're addressing these issues, to make sure we have justice for victims and actual resources. And many of these cases, from what I understand, often go cold or often not followed up on. And so anything and everything that we can do at the federal level to provide more resources when it comes to this issue, I would be willing to support. But also recognizing, that I'm not the foremost expert on any issues, and often many of the solutions to these issues often come best from the communities that are experiencing them. And so I'd want to, lend an ear and be willing to listen to folks directly impacted on the ground, families, survivors, in the ways that we could best assist in this issue moving forward.
Izzy, go ahead.
How do you intend to impact the attack on renewable green energies that this current president has done? I mean, the rollbacks that he's done for tax credits and everything for people who get solar and things like that, when that's a renewable resource that is really going to be impacted, and nobody's talking about how to combat.
I think you might have cut out towards the end there. Can you all still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Did you hear the question okay?
I think the question was around, what do we do around the attacks that we've seen on renewable energy and the environment? First and foremost, we've got to reverse these cuts, and we've got to make the emphasis, to help people understand these are good paying union jobs that we would have gotten with these tax credits. And Valadeo had signed on, several letters and statements saying he wasn't going to vote for this, and ultimately he did, right? He betrayed our communities with his vote for this big bullshit budget. So we need to reverse those cuts, and we need to help people understand the economic argument for it as well, right? I have led efforts here locally in our school district to electrify many of our buses, and passing those savings on to our district, to our students. Solar energy, is the future, and we need to make sure that any sort of just transition within the Central Valley also assures that workers are taken care of, that we are going to have, good paying union jobs. And ultimately, I think we get there through this blue-green alliance of labor, and the environment to ensure that we are providing a pathway forward. So we need to start by reversing these cuts, but we've also got to expand investment. I believe the Central Valley, just as we have been a leader when it comes to oil and gas, we can be a leader when it comes to renewable energy. We just need to have a federal government that is investing the resources needed into this region for that transition.
Go ahead, Rico. Oh, sorry. Let Freddie go first.
So trans and non-binary people in our country are under attack and being used by the right as easy targets and scapegoats for anything that they can think of. We are being barred from bathrooms, healthcare, and potentially other rights while fighting harmful stereotypes and fighting to exist. What is your strategy to protect and advocate for not only trans and non-binary children and students, but trans and non-binary adults? And what is your stance on enshrining trans and non-binary healthcare for both adults and kids?
Yeah. Thank you for raising this question, especially because, unfortunately, we've seen so many Democratic leaders throw our LGBTQ communities under the bus. And to be honest with you, it was something that was almost expected of me when I got sworn into the school board. And just for context, my predecessor resigned in disgrace as there was a teacher who was asking the district to pass a Pride Month resolution. And he said some very homophobic things to a teacher, I think at Golden West High School. And so when I was appointed on the board, there were so many people that told me, keep your head down, just, don't do anything, drop the resolution, doesn't matter. But I knew how much it meant to students, to faculty, to our community to feel welcomed in our schools. And for additional context, 20 years ago, the Visalia Unified School Board was sued by the ACLU for routine harassment of gay and lesbian students. Now, I'm the only Democrat and the only Latino on my school board, right? So I knew how incredibly difficult this would be to move forward. But despite that, I had many, many long conversations with my colleagues, explaining to them, how much this meant for our community, what it meant, what it didn't mean, right? What Fox News was saying. And I'm very proud to share with you all that despite the fact that I'm the only Democrat and only Latino, I proudly made the motion to adopt our first ever Pride Month resolution at Visalia Unified, and I got it accepted unanimously. And it has been accepted unanimously since then, right? So we don't need to cave or give in to the right wing when it comes to all these rhetorics or some of these, cultural war issues, because these are people's lives at stake, right? And that's why we need to continue to lead with universal messaging to say that you deserve a roof over your head, you deserve to be able to afford your groceries at the end of every month, and that ultimately we are all of God's children in this country, right? And that we cannot attack whether that's trans youth, whether that's LGBTQ youth, or any marginalized group across this country. We're all Americans who deserve a dignified life with economic opportunity, with equal, outcomes and equal opportunity to achieve a better life. And somebody I would say who I think does this very well is Governor Andy Bashar, and that's, what I aim to replicate in the future.
Rico, go ahead.
My second question is, there was a policy that Kamala Harris put out when she was actually running for president, which I believe would have had Medicare include long-term care for seniors, which I look around, there's a lot of people here around my age, and if you're not dealing with it, it could become an issue. For those that don't know, if you are unable or unwilling to take care of an older individual and you're looking at a nursing home, what the nursing home will do is see what kind of property you own, what kind of life insurance you have, and you sign over all of it when that person or individual dies. It can leave people basically bankrupted. If you want to buy insurance against that, you're looking at about $800 a month for the average senior. It's just an extraordinary cost. So would you support something like that and also advocate that? I know it's not like a cost of living issue today, right now type thing, but over the long term, a lot of us are going to have to ask, what are we going to do with mom and dad?
Yes, I would absolutely be supportive of that. And beyond that, I would also say that any universal healthcare policy that we put forward, Medicare for all, also needs to include dental and vision. Actually, if I could just get a survey quickly in the room, how many of you Either you or someone you love drives down to Tijuana to go get cheaper dental work done or cheaper prescription drugs? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
So many of us, right? This
Oh,
shouldn't be happening
got
in
it.
the richest country in the history of the world. We should not be paying more for prescription drugs than, every other advanced nation across the world. We need to directly negotiate these prescription drug prices down, just like the VA does. But I'll tell you, those solutions are not going to come from the same politicians funded by big pharma, right? Which in this case, or by the same health insurance companies that are ripping us off. In this case, both of my opponents have received money from those health insurance companies, money from big pharma, and I'm the only candidate in this race that's not going to be beholden to those corporate interests, and instead will fight for our communities.
Questions? No. Online, any other questions?
One.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very concerned about the privatization of Medicare, being on Medicare by the Medicare Advantage program. It's now up to, I think, 64% of Medicare recipients, either disabled or like me, over 65, are now on Medicare Advantage programs because they can't pay for a supplemental insurance policy. And I'm lucky enough to be retired from the CSU Fresno, where we have negotiated in our contract, we get regular Medicare with a supplemental covered in our retirement, but most people, that's not included, and they are being, against their wishes even, enrolled in a Medicare Advantage program with United Healthcare, which, as you have mentioned, is denying coverage for many procedures and things that people need. And for, Medicare doesn't cover long-term care except for the first 60 days of the time you are in need. Are you seeing any way in Congress to turn back this tide of Medicare Advantage taking over the entire original Medicare program that's a public program?
Yeah, and I know a lot of the discussion more recently has been around the ACA subsidies, right? But we need to start first and foremost with reversing the cuts that we saw in this big bullshit bill. $880 billion that's going to be gutted from Medicaid, from programs like SNAP, like WIC, programs I grew up on and would not be here without today. But we absolutely need to address the issues in this Medicare Advantage program. And I think there's lots of ways that and ideas that we've tried before, or that I should say people have tried before. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, as originally presented, was supposed to include a public option, was supposed to include us directly negotiating those costs of prescription drugs with pharmaceutical companies. But it was thanks to Democrats like Joe Manchin that those policies were ultimately gutted and taken out, right? And so I think we have to fight for Medicare for all. We have to fight for a system that says, you shouldn't have to go into debt just to get better, right? When you get sick, your family members shouldn't have to worry about going into debt when you get sick. As it stands in this country, 2 out of every 3 bankruptcies are tied to medical debt. It's not millennials buying avocado toast or buying houses that are too expensive. It is medical debt. 2 out of every 3 bankruptcies are tied to medical debt. Every year, over 66,000 people die in this country because they don't have health insurance or because they were underinsured. Not because we couldn't treat them or not because we couldn't save them, but because of a system that denied them care. And as long as we continue to have corporations like United Health and other health insurance companies that will always place their profits ahead of patients, we will never have a healthcare system that we deserve. And so that is what I will continue to fight for. We also need to address, the unfairness of, this Medicare Advantage plan, and ensure that we actually have regulations, right? I'm also not politically naive. I know we need to build a majority to pass Medicare for all, and we need to push, Democrats across the political spectrum to adopt these policies. But meanwhile, we can continue to fight for those things like directly negotiating the cost of prescription drugs, banning corporations from using these AI algorithms to deny our families' claims, and ensuring that we're always putting people ahead of profits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
How do you plan to address this push for AI for homeland security?
So I was a push for AI with what?
For homeland security.
Yeah, we need to stop the use of the surveillance technology, whether it is Palantir or ICE, even, monitoring people's social medias. It is an absolute violation of our civil liberties and the Fourth Amendment and our right to be free from unwanted searches and seizures. I also think we need to address the fact that many of these ICE agents are not following any sort of due process, are arresting U.S. citizens, are arresting legal permanent residents. Again, to this point about why we're in a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party, actually, California legislature proposed a bill to force ICE agents to unmask themselves and to have to properly identify themselves. My Democratic opponent did not support that bill. And I don't think we can afford to have somebody sit on the sidelines as this administration rips apart our families. So in addition to banning the Department of Homeland Security and ICE from using these, AI facial recognition technologies or surveillance technologies, I also want to make sure that we're addressing the root of this system, which is a system that is driven by profits. These for-profit detention centers run by Geo Corporation, run by Civic Corps, that profit off the separation of our families, that have inhumane conditions inside of them. We've had several people take their own lives within these detention centers at the Mesa Verde Detention Center in Bakersfield, for example. And so moving forward, I want to propose a bill to ban these private detention centers across the country because nobody should be profiting off of the separation of our families. We need immigration reform that is humane, that is comprehensive, that is just, and that focuses on keeping families together.
Any other questions?
With that, I'm not sure what the formal process is, but I would love to earn the endorsement of your club.
So perfect. So I was about to ask you that. So our bylaws require you to ask for it. So
Oh, perfect.
we'll take that as your ask. That means that we are now able to vote at our January meeting to endorse you for the race.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'll drop the website in the chat as well as the link if anyone would like to donate. Would greatly appreciate your support, especially with our end of quarter deadline coming up at the end of this month. We want to continue to show folks that this is a campaign that will be driven by people and not corporate interests. So thank you all for having me.
Randy, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Mayor Pacheco.